Hello, everyone. My name is Conan Smith. I am the president and CEO of the Michigan Environmental Council, and welcome back to Capital Connection. We are going to be talking today about food waste and climate. There's an opportunity for us to make ourselves healthier, our communities healthier, our planet healthier, and we've got two wonderful guests joining us to talk about this. Danielle Todd, who is with Make Food Not Waste, one of the Environmental Council's newer members. I think you guys joined last year. Is that right, Danielle?
Yep.
I believe that was on the basis of harassment from our staffer, Tracy Zeman, but we'll take it whatever way we can get it. So happy to have you a part of the council. And Jennifer McCullen. Jennifer was with My Green Michigan, which is a company that does collection and distribution of is it compost? Is that, I want to say, is that right, Jennifer? Across all of southern and southeast Michigan. These two women have deep insights into our food processes, our food systems, and how they impact not just our individual health and livelihood, but that of the planet as well. So we're gonna talk food waste and climate today. Danielle, Jennifer, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Jennifer, can I start with you and just ask, will you tell the audience a little bit about your company?
Yeah, so My Green Michigan is a food scraps and organic waste hauler. If that means anything to anyone in the audience. So just like your trash or recycling service, we provide that service, but specifically for organic waste. And we work in the commercial sector. So a lot of our customers are restaurants or schools with cafeterias, corporate offices with cafeterias, food distribution centers, grocery stores, things like that. And so a lot of folks, there's evidence in your own kitchen, probably when you cook, there's inedible parts of your meal, either that just was part of the food trimming, like the ends of cucumbers or the stems from various herbs and things like that, that you're just not going to use in your meal. And so we take all of that waste and we haul it to one of our compost sites, and that gets over a few months or several months period, that gets processed and turned into a finished compost product, and it's a soil amendment and turned into soil blends that's are then sold to landscapers, homeowners, the Department of Transportation, commercial projects, all things like that to kind of improve their soil qualities. So.
And people grow more food that they turn into more compost, and it's a beautiful circle.
Exactly.
Danielle, how about Make Food Not Waste? How long has the organization been around, and what's your scope?
Yeah, we started in 2017, excuse me, and we are, I would say, a complement to My Green Michigan in that we're working, as they say, upstream, trying to prevent food waste from happening in the first place. And then also providing a place for what we call unloved food, so food that needs a home, and and we transform it into community meals. So we're providing that service, like I said, to try to find ways with whether it's restaurants or consumers to help them cut down on the amount of waste that they produce, providing a place for food to go when it does need to be transformed. And then, of course, we can't get to everything. So that's where My Green Michigan comes into place. So we're all part of that same circle.
So how did you two start working together?
Danielle might be able to speak to this more than I can. I've only been with our company for about a year now, so.
Yeah, we actually, it's more of just kind of recommending each other. So when you're in this space, we often find people ask us, who would you recommend for composting services? And we've had other groups recommend us if they come across, say, a restaurant that's producing a lot of scraps, if they're looking for technical assistance and vice versa. So I think that's one of the really cool things about this ecosystem is that we all have different specialties and we can all kind of refer each other and work together on different projects.
We are proud supporters of My Green as well. We have a little bin at our shop up in Lansing. We don't produce nearly as much food waste as we did before the pandemic. But I imagine that, well, I think I might have said that wrong. It's mostly because we're not around, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
Not that we're not eating as much. I could attest for certain about that second part. So tell me, Danielle, a little bit about the sort of scope of food waste. Like it's not just the kitchen scraps from your table, right? Like there's a whole bunch of organic matter that goes into creating compost. What are we talking about that you all are interested in and concerned about?
Yeah, the food system obviously is very big with lots of different actors, and every time food changes hands, food goes to waste, unfortunately. So it might be something that's inedible, that's just maybe a scrap, but a lot of that food is actually edible that we landfill. So in the state of Michigan alone, we landfill about 2 billion pounds of food every year. Food is the biggest component of our landfills. And so the reason why we take this so seriously is because we know that when food decomposes in landfills, it releases methane. And so when we're sort of tasked with reducing our emissions, one of the easiest and best places to look is the fact that we're throwing food into landfills. So just simply by taking better care of our food, we can dramatically reduce our emissions. And research has shown that reducing food waste is actually one of the best, if not the best, solution to climate change. So it's not something that's costs money. In fact, it saves you money to actually eat what you buy. And it's not really a sacrifice. You've already purchased the food. It's just a matter of eating it. And then, of course, and Jennifer can speak to this as well, that the important thing too is that anything that isn't eaten is turned into soil, because we need to feed our soil just as much as we need to feed people. Mm-hmm. And so if Jennifer wants to add to that.
Yeah, well, so obviously the first step is to feed people, right? That's our highest priority. That's why our food is grown. But then feeding animals is also an important part of this as well. And we, definitely are proponents of the EPA hierarchy of, the food waste chain. And composting is also a huge part of that, right? There's always going to be food that either just can't be rescued, or it just is not edible, it's spoiled, and that kind of thing. And so that's where we step in. We can collect all of that waste and, divert it from the landfill where it produces methane, takes up landfill space, and kind of all those negative factors. So, it's a pretty hyper-local system, right? The food is produced locally or consumed locally. We're only hauling most of our waste upwards of 30 to 40 miles. And the greater Detroit area, that's a huge part of our customer base. And so it's staying in that general area. It's getting turned into a compost. It's then resold to folks in that same area, used to grow more food, used in their gardens, things like that. So then their yard waste comes back to the composters and the same thing happens. So it's all very hyper local, supporting our own economies, jobs, all that good stuff.
I think we'll just add too is that I'll say two things. If there's two things that our listeners today take away from this, the first one is, my gosh, anything that you can do to keep food out of a landfill is going to be the most important thing that you do in your day. So whether it's composting it or eating it or not buying so much in the first place, that's going to be the most important thing, is just please, 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 please do not landfill. And the second key takeaway that I hope everyone learns today is understanding what a significant impact this food waste does have on our climate and why it's so important. So, we talked about methane, but it's also an issue of all the resources that we waste when we waste our food. So the water, the land, the transportation resources, everything that went into growing and moving that food essentially gets thrown away as well when you landfill it. So super important issue, and please do what you can to not landfill your food scraps.
And Danielle, you provided these gorgeous photos of some folks from your team working on making sure that food production is efficient. So it's the reduce of the waste side of this. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on here?
Yeah, we operate 2 kitchens in Detroit, and we take in, like I was calling it, unloved food. So sometimes it's surplus food, sometimes it's overripe food, sometimes it's just sort of unusual food. In fact, we got a call just this morning saying someone has 14 cases of frozen sliced bananas, which I didn't even know was a thing. Yesterday, we got in 2 pallets of Roma tomatoes. It's just always different. And our team of professional chefs make community meals out of it. So you can see the meals here in some of these pictures. They're beautiful, they're delicious, they're nutritious, and this food should not be thrown away, and it just needs a little bit of love before it goes back out to the community and to people. So we use these kitchens to demonstrate that this food is just, it may not be it may not have worked in one part of the food system, but it can work in other parts, and we want to make sure that we're putting it to good use, and these meals are a testament of how that all comes together.
That's so awesome. It's we talk about the circularity of the economy, but there's also just a real community feel that both of you are giving us. Jennifer,
I saw I can see a little bit in the chat about the plastic containers. I will point out that we have just switched to paper containers, so that we did use up those plastic ones that someone had donated to us, but we have since switched to paper.
And Jennifer, we don't get all of it, right? Like we, as much of it as possible that we can reduce, there's still a little bit that's got to be reused. And this is a picture of one of your bins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you guys travel all over the state. What did you say is a 40-mile radius?
It kind of depends. I checked yesterday on our map from our compost site in Detroit or Southeast Michigan. It's in Wixom. From there to like downtown Detroit is only like 35 miles or so. So, the whole, greater Detroit Ann Arbor area is not like a huge drive from the compost yard. We do service West Michigan and Southwest Michigan from Lansing, so it is a bit of a further trek for us, but we are kind of working to adjust that and open to partnerships over in those areas to kind of reduce our road time and all that, just because transporting material is expensive and it doesn't necessarily make sense to cart it across the state. But yeah, we offer service all over Southern Michigan and all the major metro areas.
So you guys have touched on the economics of this system. You've talked about the environmental impacts that are direct. There are huge social benefits, Danielle, as you're pointing out, to maintaining an active food system. Talk to us a little bit about this global challenge that we have around climate and the role that a good food system plays in that from start to finish. You already mentioned the reduction of methane gas release from landfills, but that's just one component, right, of the larger climate challenge that a better food system is helping us to address.
Yeah, one of the things that we believe and that we're really excited about is that we have so much food that is local that you've probably heard the term, the statistics that we throw away about 40% of everything that we grow, and that number has stayed pretty static, and that's true really around the world. I mean, we're not the only country that experiences this. The United States grows twice as many calories as we need to feed all Americans. So there's so much surplus around the world, which is amazing considering that, we certainly have people here, right here in our backyard, that face food insecurity, and global hunger is an issue in many parts of the world. So some of it is a matter of not efficiently moving food around, but some of it is that we're so good at moving food around that food is going to waste. And so we see, certainly coming out of the pandemic, that a global food system is not as resilient as we once thought it was. And we are going to need to rely on our local food system even more. And relying on our local food system also means making sure we use all of our food to its fullest. So we're not just taking some food in and then, or taking food in and then using it kind of halfway and then discarding the rest. So making sure we use up everything that we possibly can, byproducts from other food manufacturing. And then certainly in the case of My Green Michigan, making sure that we're capturing those nutrients and returning them to the soil as much as possible. So I see as weather gets even stronger, and we, even in California with the floods that are happening, we're going to see a shrink in our food supply, even in the US. The local food systems are going to be even more critical, but we have to add additional processing capacity to our local food systems to make sure that we're capturing every nutrient possible.
Jennifer, at your compost facility, are you all looking to maximize the value from that food waste, thinking about beyond just composting? Are there other technological applications that you can use to capture additional value?
Yeah, there are systems out there like anaerobic digestion that would create an environment where methane is produced, and then that methane can be burned to produce electricity. We specifically do not have that kind of technology on our sites, and we're not, I don't think there's really any intention of installing that kind of thing. It's very expensive to, get up and running and then also maintain. But we are looking into, especially at Spurt Industries over in Wixom, they are taking the next step to install an aerated static pile system it basically just forces air and puts more oxygen into the process and creates, a better environment for the bacteria and microorganisms that are helping break down the material. So it gets through the process faster, but then there's also heat produced from that. So you can capture that heat and use it to subsidize the heating and, that kind of thing of the buildings on site. It's not really enough to, use at a wider scale other than your own sales building and storage buildings and things. But they are looking into that kind of system. Country Oaks has a really great example. They heat their pole barns, sales barn, and then they've also got a greenhouse with aquaponics, and they grow some vegetables and things inside there. So it's a really cool setup.
I love that idea of just finding all of that little side value, and I think it's Saugatuck or Grand Haven, heats their sidewalks, right? Because they're capturing excess heat. And I know that companies like Herman Miller have been doing that for many years. They find the byproduct of their production and turn it into something of value. It's a great example for all of us. There are some questions that are real specific that I'd love to hear both of you give some advice to our listeners on. One is about protecting compost from the critters that are out there. So you put all this delicious stuff in your backyard, and it invites, raccoons and whatnot. What would you recommend folks do about protecting their compost from wildlife? Do you store it inside? What's the strategy there?
Yeah, at our compost yards, it's a bit different than, a typical backyard setup. You have a lot less material at your own home, probably. I know I do, at least at my house. So at the compost yard, since there's such a high volume of material, what we do when it's brought in is typically, there's a lot of yard waste. They process most of the or a huge chunk of the yard waste that is, put out at your residential bin. A lot of that goes to our composters. And so our food waste or the food scraps gets mixed in with that. And that's how, that's kind of the compost blend that we have to get the NPK ratios right. And so when the food waste arrives on site, we tend to bury it right away. So it's under several feet of yard waste, so that there's not all the odors, and it's not really available to animals to dig into and get to, which is not really practical at a household setting, right? Most of your waste is probably going to be food. So there are bins that you can purchase. There's like plastic tumblers and things like that have lids, and they kind of lock on, so that can kind of help keep animals out. But just managing your pile well, I think, is helpful, just so that there's not, maybe burying it under a few inches of soil and kind of hiding it to cover up some of the odors, that kind of thing. And sometimes there's not much you can do, right? But there's definitely options out there. And I'm not a pro on backyard composting. There are others in the audience that I think could speak to that a little bit more, like maybe Amy and Sarah. But yeah, I don't know. There's some things out there that you can do, but I might not be the best person to answer.
I see Renee Wallace has posted a comment up there too. So lots of good suggestions out there. What about, I started composting at home a few years ago. And what I had done before was I'd take my food scraps. I live alone. I don't produce a lot of waste, but I'd throw the, core from a pepper down the drain and in the garbage disposal, churn it up and let it wash away, which was super convenient for me. Why should we not be doing that? What's the cost benefit analysis of putting it through the garbage disposal versus like capturing it in the compost bin that's right next to my sink now?
Yeah, it depends on your municipality and how they handle their wastewater treatment. Some, like I have here in the area, Meridian Township has a digester, so they are producing methane and electricity from that organic waste that is put through the sewer system. But not a lot of municipalities have that kind of setup, right? So they are producing energy off of that, and that's great. But then the leftover material, it's biosolids. There's, other stuff in there that we might not necessarily want in our compost or applied to our agricultural land.
Yeah.
Like PFAS is an example of that. We're finding higher levels of that, all the time, and other chemicals like prescriptions and things like that. So a lot of times that bio waste is just landfilled, right? Like there's, to some degree, not much that we can do about it. Is a lot of research happening and advances in technology to better utilize that material. But so if there is waste that you're putting down your garbage disposal that could be composted, like you were saying, your food scraps, then it's absolutely better to compost those either in your backyard using a drop-off program or signing up for like a household pickup service than putting it down the drain. Yeah.
I have to say I've become a sort of champion of the sink side compost bin. I live in Ann Arbor. We have municipal composting. It is just as convenient for me to tuck those food scraps into a compostable bag inside my compost bin if I'm worried about the mess, or just to dump and go. It's so easy, and I know it makes a difference. So and I know it makes a difference to the municipal water system too. The less we put down the drain and less processing we have to do there, and the more we can do with folks like you, Jennifer, the better. So the state has started to really pay attention to composting in ways that it hasn't in many years. Back in at the end of this past year, we amended the state's solid waste laws and ramped up some of the efficacy of the composting and recycling programs. What would you guys like to see happen in order to make composting sort of ubiquitous and easy and economically viable and socially good? What are the next big steps from a policy perspective that you would like to see the state doing?
Yeah, that's kind of a tricky question. There's not really a straightforward answer, if I'm being honest. There's a lot of things that we can do, but a lot of it comes back to, can we do this correctly? Do we have the infrastructure to handle this waste? Do we have the infrastructure to handle this volume of waste? So that's something that's, constantly being talked about in the composting industry. My colleagues and I went to the US Composting Council annual conference in January out in California. And so we got to see some examples of composting happening at both a small scale and a large scale out there. And some of you may be aware that they did pass some food waste legislation that if you produce above a certain amount of organic waste, it has to be diverted in some capacity, either to composting or to food rescue efforts. And so honestly, like that passed, and then they don't necessarily have the means to correctly handle that waste. There's an absolute ton of contamination in their waste streams at the compost
Wow.
yard. It's like they're receiving full loads of what just looks like garbage. And they're having staffs of 10 to 20 people hand picking trash out of what is supposed to be compost. And then it's still like the end product still has a lot of plastic film, metal cans, things like that in it. And so it's like, that doesn't make good compost, right?
Nope.
Like we want to make good quality compost, and we want to make a lot of it, but we have to be very tread carefully, I guess, when it comes to legislation like that. We have to make sure that all of our ducks in a row before implementing anything at a broad scale like they have.
Danielle, how about amplifying the community impacts? What could we be doing better? Are there program opportunities? Should we be investing more in community kitchens? What would you like to see?
Yeah, I'd like to see efforts both in prevention and in processing. So on the prevention side, we know that food service and households are two of the biggest producers of food waste in the food system. So more work to both kind of change habits and change minds and help people understand what a meaningful commitment this is when they use up everything that they buy. And then, certainly in food recovery, we hear constantly that people are not aware of the amazing liability protection that exists. So they're just making people feel more comfortable and knowing that these laws are already on the books and that it is safe to donate food. But then to Jennifer's point, making sure that the infrastructure can handle that increase in donations. So as a country, we only donate about 2% of our surplus food. So very, very low,
Wow.
which is both an opportunity, but also we have to be sure that we can handle that influx of donations should we spur that on. So like Jennifer said, there's not just a silver bullet here, but we believe that there are many ways that you can approach this that can really drive down that waste. And we have a goal in the state to reduce food waste and cut it in half by 2030. So there's a lot of work to be done to get there. £1 billion we need.
A billion pounds.
That's right.
Oh, well, I love it, and I'm so grateful that we have the two of you working in this space. It's gonna be great for Michigan, and I hope we can continue to amplify your work and support you, Danielle, as a member organization in doing what you do, which is great for the environment. Folks, we're at the hour. Thanks for spending your morning with us. We're going to be talking about a different kind of composting in a couple of weeks. So I hope you'll come back for that when we meet and talk about green burial. So how you yourself can become a part of the circular system. That'll be on May 19th. Danielle, Jennifer, really appreciate you both being here. Thanks so much for taking some time to talk to us today and share with everybody on the webinar.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. And I look forward to talking with you about the afterlife. Bye, y'all.